Everybody's really curious and everybody wants to make a difference. Welcome back, people of Earth. Hello. Yeah, thank you for the big applause.
Round of applause
it's
for
really
him.
great to have you
Go
here.
ahead.
Whoa, whoa. But now we will stop 500 people making crazy noise over here in the center of Prague. We are back with Flavia. By the way, Flavia, we just started with the beautiful frame of our trophies. Because those
good.
two trophies, they're looking so good.
Better than us.
Oh, not better than you. Never,
Okay.
never, of course. But those are the main prizes, of course, of the competition, which is about to begin in afternoon, evening, let's say. But before that, we still have something going on, right? We
Yeah, we have a couple fireside chats coming up, keynotes as well. And then we're going to do the actual competition. And after that, one more keynote. And then the end and the after party. So that's kind of the schedule for all of you guys to know. So I guess we can introduce the next fireside, no?
Fireside chat will be, of course, with our favorite Václav Pavlečka, but the main host, the main, let's say, speaker of that would be director of Y Combinator Accelerator in California, all the way from California, live, ladies and gentlemen. Over here, please let us welcome Mr. Kyle Corbitt. Hello.
Best
Great to have you
recipient
here.
so far. Best recipient so far of the beatboxing.
That's the competition I care about.
He came here only for that. But we do have another dancer in the house. So again, you guys know him as one of the co-founders of this lovely event. So welcome.
But you see how professional he is. He's always waiting for the jingle.
Standing there waiting.
He just doesn't enter without any jingle. Okay, which jingle we will make for Václav? Which musical style?
Should we sing? No, I'm kidding.
Reggae. All the last of our right in the house, it lay me up. Wow. Ciao.
Mr. Václav Pavlečka, everyone.
Thank you.
So he's going to be leading this fireside chat while me and this lovely noisemaker over here get out of the way a little bit.
Let's start this fireside chat in a reggae flow, guys. Thank you. Enjoy it. It's all yours.
Thank you very much.
Enjoy.
I guess we're standing then.
Looks like it.
Yeah. Okay, so good to see you again. Right, Kyle, thank you very much for accepting the invitation. I'm very glad.
Yeah, excited to be here. First time. It's nice.
Yeah, first time in Prague. Kyle Corbitt represents Y Combinator, the accelerator you might have heard of, not only because of the alumni, right? Airbnb, DoorDash, and many more. Just multi-billion-dollar companies. So congrats on that. Y Combinator started in 2005, but you joined them much later?
I've been there 4 years. I started in 2017.
Okay. But you started your career as an engineer, we'll get to it, and then later you switched to a full product owner, and now you're a director of the startupschool.org, which we'll get to as well. All right, well, I'm curious, Kyle, how can you make such a transformation from an engineer to a product founder to a Y Combinator director? Why Y Combinator? Tell me.
Yeah, fair question. I guess I never really thought of myself purely as an engineer. I mean, that's definitely what I trained in. I studied computer science, and I graduated, and certainly that's what I started my career in. But I guess I've just been kind of curious about everything around startups since the beginning of my career. So I was a founder first. I was the CTO, so I definitely did more on the engineering side there. But even there, I mean, it was like, most of you in the audience know how it is to be a founder. You sort of like are thrown a bunch of things that you didn't like expect to be in charge of. And so that's sort of how it was. And then I think also it depends on the size of the company. So for example, after that I went to Google. I was working, as you mentioned, as an engineer at Google for a while. And there it really was very engineering focused because it's such a big company. It's so regimented. But going out of that, when I came to Y Combinator, I did start as an engineer, but since it's such a small company, and I think probably a lot of people in the audience have had this experience as well, the smaller the company, kind of like the blurrier the lines are, right?
That's true.
So it made it much easier to sort of like just satisfy my own curiosity with, initially sort of suggesting more product ideas and then kind of taking ownership of larger pieces over time. And currently running the whole team for Startup School.
Right, but right after you graduated, you started your own thing, which maybe gave you the first learning with the startups, right?
Absolutely.
Like you told me last night, it was a lot of fun. And also a big learning, probably.
Yeah, I definitely. So I started a company right out of school, and we were doing video history recordings for senior citizens. We made pretty much all the mistakes that in Startup School we tell our founders not to make, which definitely was a learning experience for me. It was really valuable for learning, definitely. Less valuable for sort of like, I guess, economic success, but that was like a very, very important part of my career.
Was there anything that you needed to learn when you transformed from such roles, as a co-founder, then being an engineer, be a hardcore engineer, as you described, that, the lines were probably not that blurry, right, in Google, and then when you switched again to a Y Combinator, where you basically brought your own product, that I understand. So, like, was there anything personal that you needed to come up with?
Honestly, like, going through that whole transition, I think I learned a lot of kind of like specific skills, but like, for me personally, the most valuable learning was kind of like getting to know myself, getting to know my own kind of like likes and dislikes. A lot of people who are in Google or other similar organizations ask me, should I quit? Like, should I basically go be a founder or work for a small startup? And I think like the answer I usually give is like, I mean, if you're happy where you are and you're happy kind of in that environment, then I wouldn't recommend it, because there are a lot of advantages to being in a big stable company. Like, I don't want to oversell the startup life. I feel like I can say that hopefully pretty safely to this audience because I think you're all kind of like already on the other side of that. But I do honestly think that for a lot of people, it's not the right choice. So I'd say for me personally, the most valuable learning was that it was for me and that I really like kind of, those multifaceted roles and big, open, vague problems where it's not clear even like what the right solution looks like, which is what founders face every day.
So fast forward to today, now you're running the startup school. So how many alumni do you have and how many participants do you have?
How many? So what was the first?
At the school. So how many alumni do you have?
So at startup school, yes. It's gone through transition. Currently, it's fully open, like open enrollment, and we've had over 100,000 founders go through over the last 2 years.
From how many countries?
I'm 190. So basically all of them, pretty much all of them.
Okay, we should probably inform the audience that you can also participate because it's for free. And just go there, it's startupschool.org.
Yeah, it's super easy to sign up. If it's not easy to sign up, email me. We actually spent a fair amount of time optimizing the sign-up flow quite recently, so let me know. I appreciate product feedback.
And it's actually even for you that are only entertaining the idea of becoming a founder, so you can register and you can wait for later when you'll be either having the right idea or having the right timing in your life, which is probably connected to your personal life as well, because right now you're a father of 3 kids, right? 530, if I remember correctly, and
That's
you
right,
have
yeah.
them with you in Prague, which is beautiful.
Yeah, they're out playing in the park outside of this this auditorium right now. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's connected with the timing, as I said, and I think the nice part of your school is that you can actually register now, learn, and then start up later. You also have this matching algorithm, which is similar to dating. So tell me a little bit about that and how it works.
Yeah, so about 6 months ago, we launched a co-founder matching product as part of Startup School. And so, as you mentioned, basically you sign up, we ask you some informational questionnaires, and it's kind of similar to some dating apps like OkCupid and things, where you kind of put in your own priorities and preferences, and then kind of what you're looking for in someone else. Obviously, the questions are not the same ones you would ask for dating, although there's some amount of overlap. But things like how much time you're putting into your company right now, what your skill set is, if there's any specific industries you're going into, how far along you are, things like that.
But it's somewhat similar to dating, as you told me, because some of them are actually interests, because it should also find some sort of chemistry fit, right?
Yeah, that's super important for founders.
Yeah, among the people. Mm-hmm. And then tell me who came up with such ideas as mingling with interests and stuff. Was there a psychologist helping you with that, or was it
No,
somehow?
we did it all in-house, and I think it was really informed by my own experience and the experience of others on the Startup School team, and of course with NYC, just observing. And what we did do is we ran a lot of data ahead of time. We actually, we've had hundreds of thousands of applications to YC over the years, some of which got in and didn't. And so we did do some data analysis there, and we basically looked at okay, for each of these applications, how long had the co-founders known each other, kind of what were they doing beforehand, to try and get a sense of if there were any specific attributes that really led to strong co-founder relationships. So that definitely did inform the questions we asked, and then our own personal experience as well.
Okay, so let's say that the team is formed and the idea is formed, and then the product will be launched. Is that a way also for you in Silicon Valley to sort of have a glimpse peek in the other ecosystems as well, and to sort of, I don't know, democratize whatever you do there and bring it to the global audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So that is explicitly the mission of Startup School. I would say what we run at Startup School is I wouldn't say unnecessary for founders who kind of already are part of the ecosystem and maybe in Silicon Valley, but it's much less important as opposed to for founders who are outside and aren't kind of steeped in that environment all the time. That's where the biggest benefit is, and that's true certainly for the advice we give, the videos. I mean, it's stuff that in fact, for us, it's actually, anyway, I don't want to go too deep in the weeds, but we sort of did a pretty basic curriculum first, and then we released a second advanced curriculum for Startup School a couple of years ago. And what we found was actually, for us, this felt like the right level, but for most of the people coming in to Startup School, they were kind of just getting started, and it was too much. And so we feel we repeat ourselves a lot. We kind of say the same advice, but in practice, we look at kind of the advice we give and what leads to companies being successful. And it's, basically repeating the same principles. It's you got to spend a lot of time talking to customers. You've got to spend a lot of time building your product, and not a lot of time doing other things in the early days. So that's, that's the two-sentence summary, really.
So is it a light version of Y Combinator, and then you might want to reach out maybe and see whether among those companies are some of them that you would like to accelerate? Mm-hmm. Does this happen frequently, or?
Oh, all the time. More than half of our recent cohorts of Startup School, of Y Combinator companies had previously gone through Startup School.
Okay.
So it's very common, and I wouldn't, it's not that we give those companies an advantage, it's just that they kind of understand the principles we teach and, are making faster progress.
I'm wondering whether we will open up in that part particularly, but how do you filter through? Let's say I am there, let's say I have my idea, I have my co-founder, and how do you filter through whatever is really applicable, and where do you want to help with the Y Combinator, and what do you left out for their own path?
So you're asking, of the companies that apply to YC after going through Startup School, sort of how
do you filter that, and how do you identify the right target to help, actually?
I mean, for us, it's really about finding people who can get stuff done. So one of the things that's nice about Startup School is we can sort of track companies' progress over a longer period of time.
Okay.
And so there are really great companies who we can see over the last 6 months they've made a ton of progress, and in progress. that's maybe even the wrong word, because oftentimes it's sort of like, oh, we spent 3 months going really deep on this idea. We talked to like, hundreds of potential customers, and then we found out this like fatal flaw and had to totally throw it away. But even that can like be really like, we want to see that founders are pushing themselves, are doing something actively every week, and definitely like we see which founders in Startup School are doing that versus not. So that's really what we're looking for when people apply to YC.
So the project, let's say, finishes the course at their own respective country, and then when they're selected by Y Combinator, they go to States and they go to Silicon Valley and they spend some time with you, or how does that work? Or do you also work remotely with them now?
So what you described was the like traditional model.
Post-COVID times.
Yeah. Post-COVID.
Or I don't know. It's COVID.
Yeah, we're mid-COVID, late COVID. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, for the last year, we of course have been doing everything fully remotely, like a lot of other organizations. Going forward, it's probably one real advantage for everyone in the world outside of a small corner of California is like the sort of geographic advantage or geographic handicap is like has shrunk to an extremely small level and in many cases even disappeared. So we're definitely not telling companies to move to the US anymore. We do like still offer companies if they want to fly out during Y Combinator and they want to meet the partners and kind of like breathe in the ecosystem, like that can be valuable. But if they have a reason, especially for founders who are targeting a non-US market to start with, it's usually the right case for them to stay close to their customers as opposed to being close to us and investors.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, close to the customers. This is exactly what the startups need. Sometimes it happens at our ecosystem. What we are seeing is that the founders are too obsessed with their own products and they don't face the customer early enough. Is that a mistake that you can see frequently also among other?
Yes, that is not unique to the startups that you've talked to. That's one of the most common mistakes, and it comes from different sides. Like often, if you have a very strong technical founder, they kind of like want to go heads down and build, and I've made that mistake personally. But yeah, we have to keep encouraging people. That's one of the things we do in Startup School is we actually ask you like, how many customers or potential customers have you talked to this week, and you have to like actually write down a number, and we kind of like give you like positive feedback if you've sort of like hit your goals.
Are there any other do's and don'ts that you can see frequently among the participants at the school?
Yeah, I mean, so that definitely is a big one. I would say there's a lot of things you can do that kind of like feel like work but really aren't. That's why I mentioned earlier, just like spend a lot of time building your product and talking to customers. There are many other things you can do that maybe even feel like work, and that like probably aren't the right way to spend your time. So if it's something other than those two and you're in the very early stages. Now, of course, later on, as you start hiring people, there's kind of like, different things to focus on, but especially for early stage founders, if you're doing something that's not one of those two things, like you should very heavily scrutinize like whether it's actually worth your time.
Okay. So according to like, I mean, do's and don'ts we went through, but I'm wondering about the structure of the school because we never mentioned that. We only said it's a school. So what can a founder find there, and how beneficial can that be? I've seen videos, I've seen some quizzes, and I've seen some materials you can read. There's mingling and matchmaking. What else do we find there, and how does it work?
Yeah, so it's structured as either an 8-week or a 6-week program. It's 8 weeks if you're actively working on your company, and it's 6 weeks if you're a prospective founder thinking about starting something in the future. And we give you, we give you videos every week. If you're a prospective founder, we give you exercises every week. For the active founders, we actually don't assign them any exercises at all, because we are very cognizant and worried about being one of those extra things that founders can spend their time on besides like building product and talking to customers. So especially for our active founders, our goal is to like maintain a time commitment of like less than 3 hours a week spent on Startup School. Just enough to kind of like get you pointed in the right direction and then like spend the rest of your time doing other things. Because we think that's a better way for them to spend their time than us to make up a bunch of exercises for them.
So what would be the example of the exercise you can get as a potential founder?
Oh yeah, so we ask you, like list all of the startup ideas you had, and then we have another exercise you do the next week, which is like, here's a rubric of like ways to evaluate startup ideas, and like tell, kind of rate each of the ideas you have across one of these. And then another exercise, we ask founders or ask them to say like, make a list of like potential customers for this idea. How would you contact them? And then if you feel like you're getting close to like actually launching, like try contacting some of those potential customers and like see what feedback you can get, things like that.
That makes sense. We have last 5 minutes, and I'm wondering, like, I would like to make this more interactive. So, guys, if you have some questions, feel free to shoot, and I'll hear them and I'll ask them loudly, or I can go on with my own questions because I have enough. But I felt like you might want to ask something because Kyle represents Y Combinator, which is, I think, one of the best-known accelerators on this planet. So if you don't plan on moving to a different one, then this might be the right. Yes? I think I hear that. Yeah, I mean, fake startups and all that. Okay. So the question was about the startups that at the beginning they wouldn't succeed, and you might, discourage them to do that, and at the end they did. Have you seen many of those? And what is the key factor? Maybe when the startup doesn't have the proper product, you feel it in the beginning, but does have the right team?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. To be honest, I can't think of any off the top of my head that match that exact description. One thing we do see a lot is like founders who come in with an idea that we think is like really terrible and we don't understand, but it's like, hey, these are really strong founders, we really like them, so we will invest in them anyway and think that say hopefully they'll pivot to a new idea because they seem like they really know what they're doing, and then they'll be successful. And it definitely is often the case with that kind of company that we will invest in them because we think they're strong founders, but the idea is terrible. And sometimes they do pivot, but like oftentimes we are wrong, and and it turns out they're strong founders and they saw something we didn't, and they're building something really great. And then they don't pivot, and they're go on to be super successful. I mean, in YC's history, like we've had Airbnb was a great example of that. Like that was one that we thought was a really bad idea, and it turns out it was not a bad idea.
It's not a bad one. All right. Anyone else? All right. Yeah. Bill?
Yeah, so a famous VC pointing out the difference between school and real life said most entrepreneurs actually were C students, but the best entrepreneurs hire the A students. Do you think there's any truth to that?
Okay, I think you've heard the question, so I don't have to rephrase it, right?
Yeah. So the question was, is it true that the best entrepreneurs are often C students, but then they can hire the A students to sort of execute? I think that certainly can be true. I wouldn't generalize it. There's definitely some really great entrepreneurs who are A students. I mean, the Google founders were famous for being extremely strong academically. So I think it can be true, though. I think it basically depends. I think a strong founder probably even early in life has something that they're very interested in and very passionate about, and that thing may not be school, in which case their school work will suffer. Or in other cases, maybe it is school, and they take that into their startup journey as well.
And you have many dropouts that are mixing it as well. Right. I've seen another question out there, I think, or we can just go on. Yeah, but you need to shout. All right. All right. So the question was regarding the level of the company, where it needs to be in order to apply. I think the startup school can be applied even by the pre-founders. I don't know, potential.
Are you asking about startup school or about YC, our investments? Yeah. If Google wants to apply to YC, we'll take them.
Well,
I mean, I guess I can't guarantee that. They'd have to go through the application process. Seems likely, though.
They can go through startup school anytime, right?
No, I mean, there's not realistically an upper bound from our perspective. I think the companies that we have the most of are ones that are still pretty early. They've recently launched. And we can really help those founders. But we had Quora come through startup school through Y Combinator when they already had a couple hundred employees. So there's not enough upper bound, although that's definitely the exception, not the norm.
Right. Thanks very much, Kyle. That just says time's up. But no, it was a pleasure, and I have many questions that I would like to ask, but we can do that backstage, and then, you know.
Yeah. By the way, if anyone had questions you didn't get to, I'm open. My emails are open. I'm just Kyle at Y Combinator, and I love hearing from founders and prospective founders. So I totally wouldn't mind answering quick questions that way also.
And feel free to post with the hashtag SWC Summit. And then if you do, you can post even the questions to Kyle, and we will obviously ask and deliver an answer. Thanks very much. Thank you, Kyle. It was a pleasure.
Kyle Corbitt and Václav Pavlečka. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
So far so good. Next we have something a little bit different because our next keynote speaker is actually joining us digitally. So all that I ask of you while this is going on is just try not to applaud in the middle of the presentation. You can applaud at the beginning and at the end, but in the middle it might complicate the connection. So that's just a little side note. But you guys probably know him. I think he's quite famous already. We're talking about Gary Fowler, who is a serial entrepreneur that has already had many exits, 2 of which were unicorn companies. So congratulations to him. That's quite a feat. And now he's kind of giving back to the community. He launched GSD Venture Studios. And today he's going to give us a little presentation.
Basic question, Gary, do you hear us?
I'm here. I hear you. Can you hear me?
Perfect. Welcome. All right, we leave the stage to you, Gary.
It's
a round of applause, everyone.
Listen to that. That's all yours. The applause is coming for you all the way from center of Prague. Thank you. Enjoy.
All right. Sounds great. Well, it's great to be here today. And great to see your smiling faces. My name is Gary Fowler. I am a serial entrepreneur and investor. I've done 17 companies. I've been involved in 2 companies that are in the unicorn path. I was on the original management team at Click Software, which is sold to Salesforce, and also Eva.ai, an AI HR tech company that I co-founded with billionaire Dr. David Jang. I've been doing startups for 30 years, love building unicorns, because I believe that intellectual capacity is evenly spread around the world, but opportunities aren't. So let's talk a little bit about it. So from my perspective, at GSD, I'm the CEO, president, and co-founder of GSD Get Shit Done Venture Studios. We're a premier AI and quantum venture studio located in Palo Alto, California. We have 3 different parts of GSD, GSD Reach, our PR firm, GSD Labs, our accelerator, and GSD Venture Studios. We take operational roles in companies. We are in 38 countries around the world today and growing. But let's look at how life has changed. I was looking at the audience, not a whole lot of folks physically here today, but people all over the world are listening. 3 years ago, McKinsey said that 93% of the companies around the world were going to go through the digital transformation in the next 10 years. Well, that had to happen very quickly. Look at how COVID has really transformed us. We saw holes in the supply chain. You couldn't even get a roll of toilet paper in Palo Alto during the height of COVID. Paper towels, basic necessities. Because our supply chain was broken, we didn't have insight. And imagine the opportunities that presents for each and every one of us. So as we go down through today, look at our lives. Each one of you in the audience today, think about it. How many times in the last 2 weeks has somebody said to you, did you receive my message? And you say, well, where did you send it? Well, I sent it to your email address. Which one? I sent it to Gmail. When did you send it? I sent it a week and a half ago. Will you send it again? We are in a state of infobesity. And for you, that's a greatest opportunity. And also as corporations, as our lives. There are 49 zettabytes of data on the planet Earth today. If we took CDs or DVDs and stacked them one on top of another, it would go 35 times between the Earth and the Moon. It's growing at 68% per year. In your personal cloud that I just talked about, you have about 300,000 items. If you looked at the entire World Wide Web in 1996, it was 257,000 websites. Each one of you out there had more than the web in 1996, and it's doubling every year. In 5 years, you're going to have 10 million items. We are in a state of infobesity. Data is a new currency. I believe in my heart and soul that this is like the beginning of the 20th century, and AI is, in fact, the new electricity. And look at the changes that took place, agriculture, manufacturing then. This is an evolution that's taking place, and each one of you need to be part of it. So looking at your startups, data is critically important. We need to be able to solve that problem of infobesity. So Farming 4.0, the population of the planet Earth is going to go from 8.1 billion to 13 billion by the end of this century. At the same time, by the year 2050, we're going to have to double the food supply in order to be able to feed everybody. That means we need to use artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, the Internet of Things to really optimize our farm. We need to take it from the farm all the way to the table. We need to have that insight that we didn't have during this pandemic. And again, for each and every one of you, that's an opportunity. Look at health tech. At the beginning of the pandemic, I was asked to be on a panel. The panel was about drug discovery using artificial intelligence and not bench time, but using AI and modeling. And look at what's happened. Here you are today sitting in this auditorium. A year ago, it was just a dream, wasn't it? But here we are. Let's use the technology. Manufacturing, cobots, Internet of Things, Manufacturing 4.0, Industry 4.0, space. I just talked to one of the NASA astronauts recently. There's 6 billion Earth-like planets in the Milky Way galaxy, now estimated to be 200 trillion galaxies in the universe. We need to reach out. So where does this lead for each and every one of you? First of all, what we need to do is we need to look at how we can really optimize using unsupervised, semi-supervised artificial intelligence and quantum computing. People say to me, well, what is a quantum computer? Well, quantum computer can be 158 million times faster than the supercomputer today. What does that mean for us? That means that something that would take 10,000 years takes 200 seconds. So as we go down through, think about it. Look yourselves in the mirror. Where do I want to focus my startup? Where do I want to make the dent in the universe? I'm going to talk about 3 pillars. By the way, I've written 164 articles in the last 2 years. Forbes, many articles out there about artificial intelligence, quantum computing. Last week, I spoke at the United Nations about technology as a tool for peace, because I believe we really need to focus on that. We need to figure out, one of the things we learned in the pandemic is our vulnerabilities. We need to understand how we can work together. And let me tell you some ideas that I have, and I've written about it in Forbes recently. We need to have intergenerational teams. By that, you need the people with the gray hair, people that have the experience to help you down the path. 2, you need diversity, because we need to have a 360-degree view of what's happening. And at the same time, you need to have that those decentralized teams. Why? Because you want to it's very simple. You want to take care of the economies of scale. You want to make sure that you're getting the best bang for your euro. You want to make sure that you're getting the right kind of resources that can solve the job. We're working in Africa. I have 5 companies in Africa. Think about this. There are 1.3 billion people in Africa, 1.4 billion people in China, 1.4 billion people in India, 446 million people in the European Union. We need to bind together to solve these problems. For each one of you, I sat down with a gentleman by the name of Scott McNeely 2 years ago. And Scott McNeely, we had a lunch conversation. He was the founder of a company called Sun, which you may not remember, but it was one of the top companies at the time, and workstations, et cetera. And he told me something very interesting. He said, you got to go to areas that you fear the most, because you're going to learn the most. Step out. About 15 years ago, I went over to Russia. I started the first accelerator in Moscow. Skolkovo Startup Academy with my partner, Lawrence Wright. People said, well, why would you do that? Because there's opportunity. Go where other people don't go. Look for places where there's not as much competition and there's great resources to be able to help you get your job done. You each have that opportunity. And I got to tell you right now, if we look at it, YouTube started out as a dating site. Netflix was DVDs, and Shopify sold snowboards. You've got to pivot. Life is about having a pivot. To be able to believe that the glass is half full and not half empty. To be able to go down through and to do a startup, there are ups and downs and ins and out. People say to me, well, what is it like? I tell them it's like going down a road. If you make a wrong turn, it doesn't mean that you failed. It means you need to make a U-turn to be able to go back and solve it. So each one of you here today need to take those lessons. I call it POV, passion, optimism, and visualization. Visualize where you want to go, be optimistic, and have that passion, that burning desire that you really want to do it. Look yourselves in the mirror. Get up in the morning, and I do it myself. Get up in the morning and look yourself in the mirror and say, do I want to do it or not? Look yourself right in the eyes. That's the difference between a successful entrepreneur and one that fails. Not everybody does it, but we each have the capability, because today we're in a bold world. There is a democratization of opportunity. And as I said, intellectual capacity is evenly spread around the world. So this is the greatest time I've ever seen for companies to be able to spread. We use Silicon Valley as a port to the rest of the world. We have a little bit different viewpoint because there are people just like my friend Bill Reichert sitting in the audience today that have incredible contacts globally. There's a lot of venture capital money there, angel investors from around the world, T-Mobile Ventures, top family offices have offices there. Use it as a port. It's not the U.S. It is a port to the rest of the world. So if I want to meet people from Taiwan, India, Malaysia, Vietnam, they probably have some type of a presence there. So what I say is get up and get them. It's not about talking about it. It's about execution. I named my company GSD, Get Shit Done Venture Studios, for a reason. If you look behind Mark Zuckerberg's desk, it says GSD, Get Shit Done. But that's what it's all about. It's about execution. Believe in your dream. Go forward. Find support. Another key, you need to have an online presence. I suggest to each and every one of you that you do as much as you can, because when somebody today during this digital transformation speaks to you, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to Google your name. Make sure you've got content up there. Make sure that you have a reasonable looking website. Make sure you're participating in events just like this, so that when they bring it up, they can see those videos. I've done about 600 podcasts over the last year. And as I said, I've written 164 articles in the last 2 years. You can each do it. Take a little time out of your day, but make an effort to do it, because it gives you the credibility and it gives you that online presence that people are looking for today. It's changed over the last couple of years because of COVID. People weren't as online, digitally oriented as they are today. But again, that each person that embraces it and moves forward with their lives and takes those corrective actions are going to be successful. And if I'm a farm boy from Pennsylvania, I grew up in a 500-person village on the side of a mountain. We had Amish on the right, Mennonites on the left. We had cows and horses. So if somebody like me can do it, you can do it easily. And I didn't go to Stanford University or Harvard. I went to a little tiny state university in Pennsylvania because my father was a teacher and my mother was a housewife. So if I can do it, anybody can do it. So what I say to you is go get them, believe in your dreams, treat people the right way, and let's make a dent in the universe and solve these incredible challenges that we have in front of us, because we can do it. Thank you very much.
A big thank you to Gary. Thank you, Gary, once more for being here with us. Now I think we're going to do just a little bit of housework for a second. We have another really great interview coming up, which I feel honored that I get to do it. But while we're connecting, I think first of all, we'd like to say hello to all of the communities, the startup communities in other cities that are actually organizing their events around ours. So we're talking about London, Warsaw,
Hello.
Stockholm,
Cześć.
Bratislava.
Hey.
So a big hello and a big thank you for everything that you're doing to support this lovely community as a whole globally.
That's right. We will as well, after this fireside chat, we will have a real performance
Yes,
of today.
that's true.
That should be an acrobatic performance of a artist air gym. So
It's
this is
gonna be us. No.
no. Okay, I will start. No, it won't be us. Don't worry, ladies and gentlemen. And then, of course, we are about to have the main part of this event. We are looking forward to see 8 competitors, and we will give them those beautiful prizes after that. And then we have a keynote.
Yeah.
One more to wrap it up.
Yeah, in the meantime, for everybody here and for everybody at home or wherever you may be, in the hub locations, if you're in one of those watching the event, definitely, again, use the hashtag SWC Summit. If you want to talk to us, ask us questions, get some, I don't know, other insights or reach any of us, for sure. That's probably the best way at this point.
And I think it looks like our
we have
next
Esther.
speaker is ready. Esther, do you hear us?
Yes, very well.
Fantastic. Okay,
There is
so
pitch it like it's hot, so... No you behind us. We see you just in front of us, but you hear us
she's coming.
correctly.
She's coming. There you go.
Oh, there you
So
go.
allow me to introduce Esther. So Esther is a leading American educator and journalist. You might know her as being touted as the godmother of Silicon Valley CEOs and one of the most successful parents on the planet. She definitely knows a little bit about how to raise, educate, and manage people to their highest potential. And today we're going to see a little bit about what she's doing now and what we can learn from all of her great experience. So a big round of applause for Esther.
Great to have you online.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here. I'm really honored.
We're honored. We're honored that you've taken the time to join us. So I think my first question is about tracked learning. So you recently founded Tracked Learning. How did you come up with the idea? What was maybe the purpose behind it, and who are you working with on it?
So thank you for the question. So tracked learning is a way to replicate my classroom, which has been really successful for 40 years online. That's what I'm trying to do. So what I did in the classroom, I developed, starting in 1984, a program where it was peer-to-peer project-based learning and involved using journalism as the tool. Although I also used English, the English language classes and social studies classes as a tool to be able to teach. And this program grew from 20 kids in 1984 to the largest program in the United States today, over 700 kids doing journalism studies. And so in the pandemic, I thought, well, what could I do to help more kids also have the same kind of educational experience that my students had at Palo Alto High School? And that was, so I started Tracked. And Tracked is peer-to-peer project-based learning online for kids. It's by kids for kids. So we have teenagers that are creating learning for kids that are preteens, just a little bit younger. And the goal is really to empower kids, give them an opportunity to look at and study things they're interested in and to work together with their peers. And so far, it started in, we conceptualized it in June of 2020, and then we launched in March of this year. And so far, we already have we have thousands of kids in hundreds of schools, and we're hoping to have as many schools and as many students as possible One thing that's very interesting about it, the CEO is Ari Memar, and Ari was my student for 2.5 years. He graduated in 2006, so needless to say, I'm very excited about that. He was part of the leadership team at Uber, and then he decided that he wanted to switch. And so that's what happened in June 2020. I retired as a teacher, started the company, and he resigned from Uber. And together we are trying to empower kids all over the world.
I think if we weren't worried about the connection, then probably everybody here would be applauding incredibly loud at this point, because that's a pretty great achievement, and it's great to see it coming from you after all the other wonderful things that you've done over the years. But how can we help? How can Prague, the Czech Republic, this region, how can we help Track Learning become, the go-to educational platform?
Well, you can tell teachers everywhere. Right now it's only in English, but we're hoping it will be in other languages, within the next 6 months. And so they can go to teach.tract.app. And Tract is TRACT, and it's .app. And they can introduce it to their teachers, teachers literally all over the world. And your students need to speak English at the moment, but as I said, we're going to be having teenagers from all countries working on this. And so at some point we'll be in Czech, we'll also be in other languages. But right now, we're new. And so we can't do it in all the languages right away, but you can definitely try it out in English, and so can your kids. So you can just sign up. It's would be wonderful to have you all sign up for. And if they ask for a code of any kind, sometimes they do, I don't know. You just put in the code WOJ, first 3 letters of my name.
WOJ. You guys, that's the secret code for everything. Just remember that. 3 letters. 3 letters and we get in. So you're known for many things. I mean, the Palo Alto High School Media Arts Program, Moonshots in Education movement, just incredible things that your children have done, which are definitely worth mentioning. But also your book, How to Raise Successful People, which is a pretty, that's a pretty great title. I'm wondering, what is the magic behind raising successful kids?
So thank you again for that's a good question. The heart of my book actually has this formula in it. And the formula is, I thought it up to try to help everybody remember it easily. And because I know as a parent, you don't remember these things very easily. And so this would make it much easier for you to remember. It's TRIC is the acronym, and it stands for trust, respect, independence, collaboration, and kindness. And what I say is that you have to trust and respect your kids while they're growing up. Give them as many opportunities to do things independently as possible, because what you're doing is building trust. And when you trust a child, they then trust themselves. You say, oh, yes, you can do it, and then help them do it. And then the next time they can do it themselves. And then the more they can do, the better they feel about themselves in the world, the more they respect themselves. And so what you want is you want to grow up to be people that trust and respect themselves and collaborate with their peers and treat everyone with kindness. And I just have this little saying that kids will forget what you say in the classroom, and they'll maybe even forget what you did that day, but they will never forget when you were kind to them. And people never forget kindness. And my students work really hard. And the reason I'm convinced that they work so hard is because they know I care and I'm kind to them. And also, I think that goes for parents. It also goes in the corporate world, too. Employees that know the company cares about them as human beings, not just as workers, they will work much harder. They'll have passion to help the company succeed. So TRIC is a model. It's an acronym that works in the parenting phase, in school, and also works in the corporate world.
Yeah, I was just going to ask what startup founders can learn from this, but I assume that it's simply applying the same acronym, no? Trust, respect, independence, care, and kindness. And that way, maybe they can build even better teams.
Well, I think that's true. I mean, it really does work effectively. This acronym is one of the basics of the culture at Google, for example, in the very beginning. So I was there when Google first started because it started in my daughter Susan's garage. So, I saw everybody and met everybody, and I didn't have the acronym at that time, of course, but I could see the way that the company was structured. They hired the best people they could find, and then they trusted them and they respected them, and everybody was willing to, give ideas. And they also used, John Doerr wrote this book, Measure What Matters, with the OKRs. So I remember that, he gave a talk in the garage, and he talked about the OKRs, and it all ties into the TRIC model because, everybody has objectives that they're trying to achieve, and we all know the other person's objectives. We trust and we respect them. We work collaboratively. It works. I'm telling you, this model really works. So think about it as entrepreneurs, including the TRIC model in the culture of your company. It's so important.
I was just thinking that, you guys, can you stop this speaker down here? Because I think I can hear the other guys. I'm having like two inputs at the same time, Esther, so I'm trying to... but what I found super interesting about the TRIC model is that it's actually quite, I want to say emotionally driven. I'm tempted to say emotionally driven, something that maybe people would consider soft skills compared to hard skills. And so I think that maybe for a lot of startup founders, it feels like it might be a little bit counterintuitive to getting shit done, to go back to what Gary was saying just a few minutes ago. But I'm assuming that's not the case, no? It's all about balance.
It's all about balance. I'm telling you, what Gary was saying, it makes a lot of sense, but it's also believing in yourself. And that's what Gary did. He believes in himself, and he's able to start new ideas, new companies, come up with things that he wants to do. And I'm sure he treats the people that work with him with TRIC. And nobody wants to work with somebody that is difficult to work with. And we all know how that can be. So I think it's really important. Also, I find it really interesting that Gary and I are in the same city on the same time zone at the moment. And we met each other here at the conference.
Ah, okay. Okay, so there's also a little bit of a tie there.
Yeah.
I'm also curious about personal development because I think, a lot of the mentoring that you do for a startup founder, I think it's so important to also take the time for personal development. So I'm wondering, what would you consider one of the most important, or maybe there are a few most important things that founders should focus on when it comes to personal development so that they can be, better leaders in the end for their teams?
I think personal development is just incredibly important, and they need to be better leaders. But you need to remember that one thing in the 21st century that is so important in leaders today is that a really good leader is someone who empowers the people around them, somebody who believes in the people around them and helps them succeed. But being a leader, being the CEO of a company, can be a very lonely spot because you're the one making all the decisions, and it can be alone. So it's great if you would have collaborators or if you have a mentor. A mentor is a very important person for all founders to have, somebody that you can talk to and discuss things with, and it's usually not somebody that's in the company. It's usually somebody that's outside the company. And so it'd be great if all young founders could realize the importance of that. And because it's very hard and difficult job, and you need to have support, really, because you're making decisions all the time. You're innovating.
Yeah.
Things that you're doing are new. People haven't done it before. And so you're forging a path, which is exciting, but also you need support.
So that's interesting, right? Because we think about personal development as maybe a solitary activity, when in fact what Esther is saying is that it's not so. It's very much about looking at the people around you and getting the support that you also need, to succeed. Because at the end of the day, you as a founder are also part of the same team, right? So you can look to the others and to people outside of your team for the support that you also need to keep going. I think that's a really good point.
It's so important.
No, go ahead.
Question. I was going to say that's a very great question. You did a good job on that.
Thanks. Now let's talk just for a second about the general educational system. So when we're comparing, let's say, project-based education to simply reading theoretical books, what would you say can be, or better yet, needs to be improved in this space on, let's say, a wider scale?
So worldwide, people are still lecturing. They're still teaching the same way they taught prior to the internet. And you have books, you have professors that lecture, people take notes. There's very little use of technology, at least in the schools. Or I should say there's more than there was before, but not enough. And it's theoretical. You're lecturing, talking about the theory of things, and there's not enough project-based work. And so if you just think back to your own education and you try to remember all the classes you took and all the things that you studied, I would say most people can't remember. You can barely remember the name of the class, let alone what you studied. But if in that same period, of your education, you did a project of some kind, you'll remember the project. And it's very difficult to learn something by watching somebody else do it or by reading about it. No matter what, I remember when I was first teaching tech skills to students, I was teaching the Adobe Creative Suite to students, and I started that. It's hard to believe, but back in the 1990s, it wasn't Adobe at that point, it was called Aldus Corporation. But I was teaching those skills and I thought to myself, well, I'll just show them how to do it. And then the next day, I'll give them the opportunity to work on it. And so that's what I did. And I prepared all these lectures and slides and showed them how to do it. And the next day they went into the computer lab. There were about 35 of them. And nobody could remember how to do anything. It was the craziest thing you ever saw. It was just chaos. And so then I changed my method so that I actually trained just a team of kids. It was hard to train the first team of about 10 kids. And then those kids were working on projects with other kids. And so when they worked on the project and they worked together as teams, they then learned it. And after that initial teaching the first group, in the future, what I did was have each class that were experts teach the beginning class on a one-to-one, peer-to-peer, and they learned it really fast. So if you look at Palo Alto High School journalism program, you'll see 10 big publications. They look like they're professional, but they're all students. And it's all done by students, and the whole program is taught by the senior students to the junior students. There's just 3 different grade levels in there, 10, 11, and 12. And the younger ones learn from the little bit older, and they all learn from the seniors. And what I'm doing in that program is giving the seniors an opportunity to be leaders and teachers, because when you are a teacher and a leader like that, you take those skills and go out into the world, and you're able to do that in other settings. And I think that's where the godmother of Silicon Valley came from, because so many of my students went on to start companies. And why did they do that? Well, they felt empowered, they trusted and respected themselves. So I'd like to give that opportunity to as many people around the world as possible.
Oh, that's pretty cool. I think we all remember those days, right? When we would study for a test and then we'd take the test and then we'd almost immediately after walking out of the classroom, not remember a thing about what we studied. So I think that's probably a very similar point to why project-based is more important, but also interesting for us as startup founders, no? Because how we enable within our teams people to teach each other and to become leaders themselves and to have that kind of responsibility, but then maybe also apply the trick method amongst themselves is probably a great way of, creating the right company culture in the end for everyone. So staying in line with one of the speakers that we have later, actually, you mentored Lisa Brennan-Jobs, right? So
that's right. Lisa Brennan-Jobs was my student.
And how was that? Was she similar to Steve Jobs or anything? Because we have Woz coming later, but we're curious.
You do?
Yeah,
interesting. Yeah. Well, so Steve Jobs actually spent a lot of time in my classroom. Lisa was in my class, and he used to like to come and just hang out. And he would come in and sit on the floor. It was kind of crazy. And I was like, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, I just like watching the kids. And I think what he was doing is watching to see how they were using the computer. I thought that was pretty interesting.
Ah, okay.
And I think he got a lot of ideas from that. And Lisa is a very talented student. She became editor, actually, of the newspaper. And she, in many ways, was and is like Steve, because they're both very determined. Let's put it that way. They don't give up easily. And I think that also created a little bit of friction between the two of them, because they both had very strong ideas, and both really smart, of course, and pretty verbal about it. So yeah, it was really exciting for me to have Lisa as a student. Of course, it's kind of crazy. I didn't really know who Steve Jobs was when he first walked in the class. It's just another parent. Of course, I got to know him as time went on, because his daughter was in my class for 2.5 years. So I got to know him pretty well.
But
she's a great person.
But you also mentor other super successful people as well. So I have maybe a little bit of an odd question, but what do they struggle with that maybe, the rest of us don't realize? Because I think we feel like maybe there's sometimes a gap between, let's say, the superstars of the world and us as, starting founders and things like this. But I'm sure they also have struggles of their own. So what maybe are some of those?
I would say the biggest struggle for a lot of those kids, and I have a lot of kids whose parents are CEOs, is, can I be as good as my dad or mom? Can I succeed as well as they do? And so what I did as a teacher is try to help them also believe in themselves. That's where the trust and respect comes. And I gave them a lot of opportunities to do things that were important to them. So I think it's really important for kids to be able to do something. So be a leader, give talks, help develop things. Right now at the program in Palo Alto High School, we have something called entrepreneurial journalism. So kids actually come up with an idea for some kind of a magazine, newspaper, whatever, website, and then they have to literally go through the same process as founders do. So they have to raise funds to get the money necessary to do that, and they have to gather a team of kids to do it, and then they get to create it. And this is all done at school, by the school. So of course it's really popular because kids want to do it. When they do it, of course, they feel good about themselves because they've already had this experience doing it in a place that is, more supportive. So that's one of the things that I think is really important.
That's fantastic. Esther, really, you are a rock star, and the world is much greater with you in it. So thank you for everything that you do. Thank you for being here with us. And now the moment I say round of applause, it's going to be very loud. So I say have a great day, and I hope to talk to you soon. Thank you once again. Everybody, round of
Esther
applause
Wojcicki.
for Esther.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you
All
so
the
much,
best.
Esther. It was a pleasure having you here online.
Well, I'm Kate, and I am one of the organizers of Startup Workup and Summit. And I'll be a host for next about approximately half an hour. And the keynote speaker that I am hosting for, his name is famous and known for quite a couple of things. First one is that he participated in Dancing with the Stars. And he became famous for his cha-cha moves. The second one is that he starred in one episode of Big Bang Theory where he dared himself to call Sheldon Cooper nerd. The third one that is that he is a member of professional Segway polo team. And last, maybe. 45 years ago, this guy co-founded a company that shows a logo of Isaac Newton sitting under the apple tree. 1 year after, they changed the logo to one simple bitten apple. Hello there, Steve Wozniak. How is the connection? Can you hear me well?
Oh, connection is great. You know, that's one of the modern things that technology has brought us, you know, across the world. Great to be here in the tent with you all, the circus tent.
How are you, Steve?
Very good today, yes. We have tickets to a concert. We might go to dinner. So just taking the day is, thankfully, I need an easy day.
Sounds amazing. Enjoy that. By the way, have you ever been to Czech capital, Prague, capital of Czech Republic?
I have been to the Czech Republic and Prague. I may have started out with speech, or I may have started out with a Segway polo event, or I may have been with friends in Germany, and we said, where can we go? Let's take a train. We can go to Prague. And so I started going there a few times. I've had Segway tours of Prague and Bratislava, which I call that like a smaller Prague, but it's very, very nice. It's got a lot of the old and the new, like Prague does.
Well, we all hope we might welcome you and your Segway polo team back in Prague again soon. Now let's jump, not at the absolute beginning, but maybe 45 years ago when you founded Apple. What were the biggest challenges you faced, apart from working from Steve Jobs' old bedroom?
Sure. Steve Jobs, wanted a way to have a company, because he wanted to be famous and important and take the world forward. And he worked on a telephone out of his bedroom, when it came time to get parts, when it came time to get sales, to get publicity, and kind of ran those things there. But all the engineering, all the product that really put Apple into business was really done in advance, outside of his knowledge, even before he knew about it. The computer existed, was being shown off, the Apple I and the Apple II. So those days, though, it was kind of neat. We'd grown up, we'd known each other for 5 years. We were very young. We're in our young 20s. We have no savings accounts, no big money. We have no rich relatives. We had no business experience. And Steve didn't have the academic background, but I was a superior engineer of certain kinds of products. And we'd just been doing these things together. I would invent something. Steve would come into town from out of different state, and he'd see what my latest invention was. Just for fun, he'd turn it into money for us. He needed money much more desperately. So that was a big driving factor. And the two of us worked together so well. I was very shy, so I had very few friends. The fact that Steve Jobs would even talk to me and could recognize my greatness made it like one of the few friends in my life. I mean, so he and I really wanted to do things with him when he was in town. As I said, mostly he was out. He was living a very different life, more of a full hippie life, which I appreciated, but that wasn't me. I had an engineering job in Silicon Valley. And The thing is, we thought that, oh my gosh, there's a lot of interest in this little computer I designed, just at a club. And all the big computer companies were saying, no, 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 forget it. But that inspired us even more, because we're on a revolution. People are going to have their own computers in their hands. It's not really the world we have today, but it was a step along the way, and we saw it. And we had a machine that was 5 years ahead of the rest of the startup companies trying to start up in the business. And that inspired us. So we went ahead, and at first we just had to get a little bit of attention. We didn't have any money. I had to sell my most valuable possession. Steve sold a little van for just a few $100s each to make a bare PC board that you could make a computer on. And that was the start of it. Then we needed even more money, and fortunately we got credit on parts. We didn't have to pay immediately. We had 30 days to make a computer, sell a computer, and get a little money and then pay for it. We came from the most humble beginnings you ever saw. Our product category didn't exist. Computers in the home just didn't exist. We were that new. That's an advantage. If there's no big companies in, you don't have to compete, and you just have to have superior products and all that. And the mainframes out there had switches and lights on them, and they were ugly and not accommodating to humans. And we brought to the world a product. Apple II, the first time ever that arcade games were color, the first time ever arcade games could be written in a day by a kid because they were software. And, so we started thinking about, well, what features should we build into these machines, and how do we package it? And that was part of getting into business. We took my design, but make it a product. And that was largely Steve Jobs' role. So it was very lucky for the two of us. And then how do we get money? All of a sudden, it looked like there was going to be a market for these sort of things. How do you build 1,000 computers when each one costs $250 to build? You need $250,000. Oh my gosh, we looked, Steve was doing that, finding, possible avenues, and we met an angel investor who invested in us, and he became a third partner because he believed we had something that was going to be big.
Well, to Steve, that sounds like a dream team. You designed Apple II basically from the scratch. How do you feel now when looking at iPhones and MacBooks? Do you recognize some of your features, design features, or user experience features?
Some of the things that I was interested in, like ease of use, I see being very important in almost everything I look at to this day. Was it designed efficiently, small? As Steve Jobs used to put it, is it elegant simplicity? Elegant means it has to look nice. And usually if you're writing a program, you spend 90% of your time just getting every little rectangle in the right place and rounded and looking consistent and the font's right. That's where a lot of the work comes in. That's the elegance of it, and it had to be simple. And I see that in a lot of the best software today. I judge software the same way I judge it for what I did. Now, what I did was very different. I just had, genius engineering pouring out of me, and mostly today it's marketing. What do people want? How do you sell it? And you as a buyer, a customer, you can't see inside to see, is the engineering good or is it bad? Is it really a step forward? It's almost hard to tell. It's hidden from you. And, you can't go inside of chips and analyze hundreds of thousands of lines of software that there might be very bad things in there. You can't do it. So it's a different world. When I did it, I understood the entire machine and all the technology in it, and I could actually look at it and analyze things and understand them. But that lasted, for a couple of decades, but it's gone. That's good. The world's gone.
You founded the company in 1976, the same year that the word startup was used for the first time. It was in some Forbes article. Did you consider yourself being a startupist?
It's funny. I was shy of business and always scared that it was political and I was non-political, and that you have to take sides and you have to have confrontations and try to challenge people for jobs and what's right and what's wrong. And I don't like that. I just like to do such great engineering. It can't be challenged. So I didn't consider myself the entrepreneur in the business sense. I wasn't going to start a company. I wasn't going to start an industry necessarily, although I really did want to get my computer to the world. But I wanted to be an engineer that other engineers appreciated and understood my great engineering. So I was more the mathematical, scientific, how would you judge how smart somebody is, that kind of person. And Steve Jobs certainly filled in. You absolutely need, if you're going to have a startup, you need the business thinking and the marketing thinking. And between Steve Jobs, myself, and our funder, Mike Markkula, we covered those bases for the very earliest startup. And luckily, we had a product, though, that was ahead of the rest of the world. Everybody else was trying to build a type of machine that I'd even built myself 5 years before. So I was 5 years past that in my thinking and wanted to make it usable by a human. It's not important that a computer can be powerful and help you do things. It's important that it be affordable and be useful. You can actually easily sit down and type in some programs and get the answers. And everybody else was taking approaches to make small computers for the home that weren't that way. So at least we had, a good start in saying, no, we're going to make things so human it looks like a typewriter. We actually had two companies, two starts. The first one was in 1976. It was a little partnership, myself, Steve Jobs, and a guy named Ron Wayne, who sold out for a few $100s his 10% of Apple after a few weeks. He just didn't think it was going to go anywhere, and he was taking a big risk because Steve and I had no money. What if we took some orders and we failed to deliver and got sued? They'd get his money. He was the only one who had money, and he only had 10% of the company. So he sold out. Now, that was a short-term holding time. While we had a garage that was never used as a company, it was just a little transit place. When a company built our computers for us, we'd bring them to the garage, make sure they worked, and then we'd drive them down to the store to get paid cash. That was there were never more than one or two people in the garage at a time. It wasn't discussing products, doing engineering, doing any of that at all. So that was for the Apple I was being shipped. But before we ever delivered an Apple I, we had the Apple II, and we knew that was the computer that was going to make a big company successful and was going to change the world. We knew that was the one. It's because the Apple I was not a Steve Wozniak computer design. I didn't design it from the ground up as a computer. I modified something I had to type to faraway computers. In the early days of the internet, there was the ARPANET, 6 computers in the United States, and I could log onto them and read files and run programs. And so I built that, and I modified it. I added the brains, which is a microprocessor, and I added the memory, which you need, the right kind of low-cost memory, and built that first computer, became the Apple I. But the Apple II was so much going to change the world. And even my engineer friends at Hewlett-Packard turned me down 5 times for the personal computer. But my engineer friends said, this is the best product we've ever seen. So that was the one that was going to make it, and that was the one that we knew we'd sell 1,000 of, and we had to raise the money for it somehow. So Steve fulfilled his role so much better than anyone else I could imagine. Young person going out and taking all the steps you need with nothing to start with to build a company.
So an engineer mind and a business mind, that's a rule carved in stones and business plans. What do you think are some of the challenges startups face today?
One of the challenges is marketing. Is the product you're working on going to make something better in the world? Yes, it is, always. Is it going to really help people? But is it going to be enough that they'll buy it? Will you really make money with it? Sometimes you can build a great product, but man, people don't want that. They've got alternatives, or somebody else has something else out that seems better. It doesn't get noticed. So that's marketing. And you really do need good marketing talent. Now, the best marketing talent of all is not to imagine what people want. It's to say, what do I want? If you're one of the people that wants this thing so badly, and you make it excellent, you make it so fine that the details are right for you and perfectly fit your life, and there's other people like you, you can win and hit a home run when other people didn't expect it, and think out of the box and think differently. And like Steve Jobs on the iPhone, wanting to make sure every little detail the engineers came up with, he would try them out and make sure it worked in his own little product. In his little world, it had to be a usable device. And when you build something for yourself, sometimes you hit an incredibly much better product than if it comes from committees and teams and market research and everything like that. I point to the Apple II computer with my love of games in it. I point to Elon Musk with his large family building a large electric car. It turned out to be a huge market for a luxury car that's more expensive.
Well, continue with what Steve Wozniak wants. Your new company, Force, is the first platform where subscribers benefit from the energy savings generated by the green projects worldwide. You have recently said you get around 12 pitches a day. So why did this one caught your attention? What was unique?
It's funny, of all the pitches I get, Sometimes I think some might have value, and I send them on to a business advisor, and he'll like call the company or find out more about it. Does this look like it's going to really be something worthwhile? But it's a long, long process, and F-Force was one of those few. F-Force is really one of only two that I really did say, yeah, I want to join you. But they already had an ongoing company that would go into businesses and look at the lighting and look at the air conditioning, and we'll modify it for you. We'll finance the modification, and we'll measure your energy savings, your electricity savings, and we get a cut of it. That's how this company ran, and they were making tens of millions of dollars a year and had lots of investors that wanted to put huge in. So they were an ongoing successful company. This is not round A, startup type stuff. But I looked it over because it took 2 years, because I don't like to jump into all these opportunities when I'm not totally sure about it. But I really liked what they were doing, because to me, engineering is efficiency. Use less energy, get more out. Efficiency is defined in engineering as output divided by input. So eventually I joined them, and we also brought in, they were at a limit of financing. They had to finance all these modifications to businesses themselves, and they were at limits as to how they could raise money in Italy. It had to do with national laws. But by going outside and having blockchain investment structures on new exchanges that weren't just stocks, they were now including blockchain, we set up a token that is the equivalent of investing in the company. So it's like a share of stock. If you believe in a company that's going to make money, being efficient with energy, this is a way that you as a normal person, not a big industrial investor, you could invest in that field by investing in our token. And we worked with a couple of the newest exchanges in Malta and places like that to actually get listed. And I enjoyed it. It's new, it's exciting, it's an adventure. We're breaking new ground. That's what I always want to be associated with, not just we're doing the same old thing and making money.
And do you have any recommendation for a city, for example, for Prague? How could Prague, Czech Republic, maybe with the help of eForce, become greener city, maybe a leading platform in green energy?
Absolutely, but it usually boils down to some people taking some steps that are effective. And you say the city of Prague, it sounds like the government of Prague, the mayorship. And the city could encourage others to do it, but it's really going to take young thinkers that say, oh my gosh, look at what F-Force is doing. We could do the same. We could sort of copy that model and try to do the same thing and make business efficient. Or we could partner with F-Force and say, do you want us to be a partner of yours in the Czech Republic? And also it's possible to not only be a partner, but maybe we can form a blockchain a blockchain exchange here that we're part of your token and raising more money for you. I mean, that's what it's all about. The tokens allow us to raise more money and do more of the good we're doing.
Well, from Prague now turn to low Earth orbit, from one small step to one giant leap, your latest moonshot, company Privateer Space, is addressing the issue of orbital debris. Why did you get involved? How does, cleaning the space junk fits your purpose?
Well, just like F-Force is doing a good thing for humanity, getting things done with less energy, everybody recognizes that there's an awful lot of junk in space now, especially in low Earth orbit, and there are going to be some accidents. It's just to that huge a level. We don't have a good mapping of everything that's out there. We pretty much map the biggest things, but we don't see a lot of the small ones. And our company is going to start out, first of all, by helping the world and others move to shared knowledge about where the different objects are, what orbits they're in that need closer watching. And we're going to do some of our watching from space, not from big antennas on the ground. And that should be more efficient. And we're going to share it with other people that are interested in low Earth orbit systems and satellites, and we hope to partner with some of the ones that are already up there if they can, help us do our job more efficiently. So we're really starting with mapping space. Once you've mapped space, how do you get rid of some of the junk? You may know where it is, but you may not even be able to move a satellite out of the way to avoid it. You may not have the energy. So the next step will be, how do we get some of it down? And there are a lot of approaches going on already. I don't want to get into them specifically, but we're working with others. We're so new that what we're doing exactly is hard to describe today. It might be a little different tomorrow. We'll think of something new. We'll run into somebody, sometimes a great a university student has a really good idea for, you know, some infinite propulsion type technique just from, you know, solar panels, something like that, you know, ion drive, whatever, but something that actually works, and they'll approach us. So hopefully we're, you know, we believe that we want to clean up that lower Earth orbit for humanity.
Well, infinite propulsion, that sounds like something from the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
That inspires us.
Well, low Earth orbit is getting crowded. What do you think about the commercial space race heating up? Do you think that that shift from more traditional stage like agencies like NASA to private companies is a good thing?
You know, a lot of things are actually turning private now. By 2022, it might be more money coming from private sources than from the government, from NASA. At first, everybody says, oh, how do we get something from the government? And that almost restricts you to having to have a spy satellite or a satellite that could be a weapon, you know, or something like that. But now it's open for things. Space tourism, I'm going to be honest, I'm not a big fan of space tourism. I don't see that we tell a good story that even in decades we can actually, you know, set up useful bases that pay for themselves. I think right now we've got a few very rich people. Rich people have always been going into space. I remember when we founded Apple, our president of the company and had a few friends, and they knew something about rockets, and we invested some money in a rocket launched from the ocean, you know, but not as high up in space, like where you can actually carry a person. But now I think it's rich people are doing it more to kind of get famous for it than that they have a story that actually makes money. Now look at SpaceX. They have actually distributed supplies to the International Space Station. Anyone can see that that's worth money, at least to the governments that run the International Space Station. So, but saying, oh, we're going to take people into space for the fun of it, I don't think of that as a super productive, not a scientific research exploration. Oh, we're going to set up bases on the moon and Mars. Okay, I want to see it. Look, 20 years we haven't even gone back to the moon, and what is the value of it? It's hard to say. So, but technology changes. Maybe we'll find some way to make something out of it. So I'm not a super fan of that. As far as all of the satellites and what they're doing, look at Starlink. Starlink, going to be tens of thousands of satellites probably to bring us internet no matter where we are. My wife and I drive a lot of road trips, and we're out in the boondocks. We're way out, away from cities, and we don't have any cellular, and we don't have any internet, and so that's a really, really good thing. You know, Elon Musk has some good vision.
Well, you just said you're not too big of a fan of the short-time space tourism, just for the PR sake of it. But given a chance, would you want to go and become a proper astronaut?
There was a time I would have loved to go to Mars even one way. I would have loved to go to space, probably. As a matter of fact, a lot of people that got rich in the technical world, or at least some of the ones that I knew personally, they had enough money now. Richard Garriott and I'm trying to think of a couple other names that were like largely involved in games. They actually paid $20 million to the Soviets to launch into space. So yeah, if you have that much money, it's sort of a dream to say, I'm one of the few that did it. I don't think that's like the real pioneers that we admire that took all the hardships, like to cross a country on horseback and, you know, try to just really discover new things. I'm not sure that's not the same thing, you know. But we obviously look at reaching the moon, an important step for humanity. So, but getting into space yourself, hey, if I can get into space, and it's like the cost of a first class or even a private flight from home to Prague, now that's interesting. Maybe I'll go into space to get to Prague. So I'm into new thoughts and new approaches, new things. But it's got to pay for itself. You know, the expense of launching, you know, every single gram is so high. It's expensive to get up there.
Oh, well, that's for sure. By the way, do you have a favorite space rocket, space shuttle, or spaceship you would choose?
From fiction, we've got so many great ones, every single one of them, because they're all so good. Nowadays, I don't know. It's just what you and I read, you know. Obviously, you need a large enough one, and there's the Falcon, and you talk about machines that will carry 200 people to Mars, because by carrying 200, it becomes efficient. I like that thinking, you know. The trouble is, you can never tell which science fiction can become reality. Like like computers on your wrist or phones on your wrist?
Well, I think that humankind finally deserves some proper hoverboard. Now, from science fiction to more mythological creatures, you recently worked on the show Unicorn Hunters. How was it? Why did you get involved in that?
Unicorn Hunter, it's really amazing. I don't like to go out and promote myself. I don't want, give me some reality TV shows. Let me interview people and be a scientist on the air. I don't want to do that. I have a life. I like to live doing normal things that normal people do, but I get called once in a while. And they'll catch my attention for things like Dancing with the Stars was a big one. I got to, but to me, it was not being on it. It was seeing how a show is produced, like seeing how a movie's produced. And I was on a series, The Big Bang Theory once. Well, Unicorn Hunters is a series that's like Shark Tank. And we interview startup companies, raw startup companies. Do you have something that might become real big, really grow a lot? And we ask a lot of questions. We interview them. We do make some decisions about whether we would invest small amounts. We're not the big financiers like Shark Tank. The viewers on TV have a way through websites that they can become the investors, the little guy. We call it democratization. We want to open it up not to the big, huge, industrial investors. And so it's like you get to watch it and judge for yourself based on all of our questions and our comments on it. Do you want to invest in these little startups? And normally you don't get a choice. As a human being, you don't get to see those startups. Only like venture capitalists and certain categories of people ever saw them before and heard their stories and got to judge, might this be something that grows big? It's into a unicorn. So it's an exciting show. So I'm glad for everybody that sees it. Funny thing is, we're sitting there, let's say a half-hour TV show, 1-hour TV show. A bunch of us are called the Circle of Money. And we're asking questions and we're kind of making decisions. Can you make a decision upon hearing a startup pitch in 30 minutes? In 20 minutes? Can you? Or will you have ideas that come to you months later? On one of the pitches we had a few months ago, I woke up yesterday and had a whole different idea on it. That I'm going to approach the other people in the show and see what they think about what I have to say, because it sounded really great doing one great thing, but then I got a lot of questions. Is it really?
Well, you work on this show. You said you get around 12 pitches a day. You have few decades of experience in the field. And by the way, you also founded one of the most valued and most successful company in the world. Based on your experiences, what do you think makes a great pitch?
The person making the pitch is always most important. I used to judge robotics contests, and I would interview high school teams, but they would always elect one person to make the pitch. If that person was really good, they had a much better chance of getting nominated for some of our awards. The confidence in the person who's making the presentation. We had 1 week where we had kind of a first round of Unicorn Hunters, and the second week we had a second round. And the second week, the presenters were coached to make sure that they really presented themselves very quick, confidently, added up. It wasn't like, I'm thinking about it, I don't really know the answer. So they have to have familiarity with their company, with the features, with the aspects, with the costs, with pretty much everything. If they can answer all our questions, that stands out as a big winner. Obviously, this is always true in a startup. You got to have passion. You got to believe you're doing something for a reason. If you were driven to it, maybe because somebody in your family had a medical problem, or they died or something, and that set you out on your mission for your, maybe sometimes they work 20 years really to get to something they really believe in inside. That's important, is the inside belief. And the story that they tell should be logical to a human being. Yes, this adds up. And the interviewer should be skeptical and question, are you sure about this? Why do you think this? Where did you come up with this idea that this would actually connect? And also in the end, there has to be a return on investment. What you're doing is really good, but where's it going to make money in the end? Because it doesn't make money, it dies.
In our pandemic and post-pandemic world, what are your thoughts on the future of technology? What trends do you think we might see emerging in the future?
Yeah, well, it really gave us a great chance to see all of the advances that have been made so well for online video conferences and communication. from Zoom Up and WebEx, and some of them have advantages over others, but we've got so many of them and we use them. We got comfortable with it. More than that, because of COVID, businesses had to tell people stay home. I mean, California was one of the earliest states in the United States to say everyone has to stay at home, sequester yourself, sort of. I called it reside in place, not shelter in place, because reside in place is RIP, if you know English. Rest in peace. And so what we found was we can be very comfortable at home, very casual, and sort of on part-time and intermixing your work with some of your personal things, and you can be productive. You can be productive and not have to go to the office and all the formalities of the office. So now I think we're going to come back to a lot of hybrid systems where maybe you go into work 2 or 3 days a week and it gets organized so you can have some joint meetings. Heads working together is always good, and managers kind of want to be responsible for something. I hope that we wind up with some kind of, that we... I don't know. Anyway, I hope in the future we correct a lot of the wrongs that technology has brought into the world. The rights, unbelievable life we have today compared to before, but some wrongs go along with it, and it's largely in terms of control of the lessers by the ones who have power and money. And I hope we look into changing some of that, maybe with regulation and splitting up the very largest of the companies and having transparency to guarantee more truth. I think that all the good decisions in life come if you're totally truthful all the time and not trying to make up a story and fool people. Respect your customer. They got brains, and it's their data. Their data. It's not your company's data, but we go the other way right now. But someday we should come back, and that may take regulation to say, what you post will be protected for you, and you can always take it back and own it. I think people should have access to real support. All the time I have trouble, things going wrong with my technology. You go online, you can't find a way to talk to a human, usually. I love when I find a company that I actually got to chat with a human being live, and that can solve my problem. I am so thankful for that. Because there's just too many times you just can't get the help you need that a human could do. And that means the technology sort of won over humans when that happens. You have voice trees, and I have a problem. You call in, press 1 for this, press 2 for that. And what you're after never seems to be in any of their categories. And sometimes you just can't get to a human unless you know a trick or know somebody. And I hope that someday we sit back and say, spam, there's too much of it has invaded our lives. How can we cut it down with technology?
Well, I do agree. Quality and good customer service would be a quite nice new feature. And we have final question, this time coming from the audience. Many movies were made about the history of Apple. Which depiction of Steve Wozniak did you enjoy the most? As I recall, there were 2 Hollywood movies, some smaller production. So what was the best?
I thought they were all great. My favorite was Pirates of Silicon Valley. Go back and see that. That is a story that just grabs your heart. What an adventure it was when things were starting. The movie Jobs was about how Apple started, but it was very wrongfully told. It was very inaccurate and didn't portray things honestly. And the one called Steve Jobs, based on Aaron Sorkin's writing, was very accurate about Steve's personality, but it wasn't the interesting story people want about how young people made decisions to start a company. I liked my portrayal, the portrayal of me and all of them. I've met 2 of the actors that portrayed me. I met pretty closely. And Josh Gad in the Jobs movie, I didn't meet. He's a very well-known actor, very good job. He'd actually read my book as part of his job, and the others didn't. And he tried to put parts in out of the book that corrected things that were done wrongly in that movie, but they wouldn't let him. But I admire him as a person. And so they all portrayed me as being smart and funny and witty and clever and nice. So they got it right.
Well, technically, you could say that the best performance of Steve Wozniak was played by Steve Wozniak because you played yourself, right, in Big Bang Theory.
Yeah. Well, Seth Rogen, what a cool guy, man, I'll tell you, to play me. So it's fun. Sometimes it's just fun to watch him, people that you admire for other roles and all.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today, Steve Wozniak.
And thank you for being such a great host.
Happy to be here. I wanted to say goodbye and may the force be with you, Steve Wozniak. But instead of that, I'm gonna say good night. Thank you for being here with me, and may the force be with you all. Enjoy your evening.